So we are going to create another sphere shading piece using this time gradient shading, which I think you will find a little more quick and satisfying than the cell shading. You're going to go ahead and make a blank document in Photoshop that is 5x7 300 dpi. Just hit create new and select the 5x7 300 ppi. Then you're going to hit create, and here is our background. So the first thing we're going to do is create a new layer and name it sphere. You're going to come over to your elliptical marquee tool and you're going to make that sphere once again, and then decide what color you want your sphere to be and fill in that base color. You want to pick a medium color for your base. All right, and then select, deselect, okay, and you're just going to position it with the move tool if you need to. Now we're just going to set all our base colors, so I'm going to click on the background, create another layer and call it table. And I'm going to come over and switch it to my rectangular marquee tool, and I'm going to make that table. Make my table a lightish green color and fill it in. Select, deselect, and then make one more layer, wall. And again, just come find a color, fill it in. Okay, so here's our base for shading. I'm going to come back to my sphere. I'm going to put my shading on my sphere first. So I'm going to create my new layer and create a clipping mask. Okay, and I am going to now come over and underneath my paint bucket, so I'm going to hover over your paint bucket and right click, and then you're going to see a tool called the gradient tool, and it looks like a value scale. Okay, I want to, for now, turn my opacity up. I want it to be the round second part right here, and I'm coming into basics. Make sure it's under the folder basics. So I'm clicking this drop down menu right here, and under basics I'm going to click here. Now you can see the color here is the color of the back wall, but I want to pick up this color. So I just use my picker tool to pick up my sphere color, and then because I'm going to do the shading, I'm going to darken it. I'm going to come down and get that darker color, or I could come in and get like a purple. So we could play with our shading colors and see how it goes. Let's see what looks best. Now your gradient works, you pull a line, and that's the direction of your light. So my light, if my highlight's coming from the top right, then my shadow will be in the bottom right. So I'm going like this, and it creates my shadow, and the more I do it and the closer I get to it, the darker it's going to be. So what I want to do, and I'm making sure my gradient is that center one. We don't want to do this because it's too flat. This gives us this kind of pin light that will give it a little bit more roundness. So I'm just kind of building up my shadow, and it fades it. You can also, so it goes naturally from dark to light. If you do too much, go back in your history. And then I'm going to create a new clipping mask. So I'm going to create a new layer, create clipping mask, and I'm going to pick up this color again. And I'm going to go slightly lighter. So I've got my shadow that I kind of did purple, and I could always, fade that opacity. Is it too much? And then up here I've picked my lighter blue because my highlight wouldn't be purple. It'd be a lighter blue. I'm going to come back to gradient, see it's changed it for me. And I'm going to kind of get that lighter blue. Oh, and then I pulled out and it like really got a nice highlight right there. So I'm going to pull out, and it's going to create that like kind of bounced light. And then I can come back here and kind of darken that if I want to. I can come back down to my picker tool. And so the thing about the gradient is really working back and forth to get that sense of dimension. I might go a little darker right here. So I'm just constantly pulling it until I'm satisfied with my transition of light and dark. Now, so now I have this round looking, I've got deepest shadow, mid-tone, so deep shadow, mid-tone, lighter. I really want to get more of a highlight. So what I'm going to do, make one more clipping mask. And I'm going to see what's going to work. I'm going to come back to my lightest blue color and I'm going to go even lighter. Okay. I'm going to come to my brush. I'm going to go to soft round pressure and opacity. I'm going to make this brush pretty big. And I'm just going to push down and kind of swirl it. I'm going to make it bigger. All I need to do is like, here we go. And I want to just kind of keep doing it. My smoothing's on, so I'm going to take my smoothing off. I just want to like right in here, just kind of lighten it. I'm trying to figure out how much is going to work for that hot highlight. And then I'm going to fade it over here, just so I get that little bit, and I'm still not satisfied with it. Let me see here. There we go. And then I'm going to fade it. So I use the soft round pressure opacity. I just want it to be very subtle. So this takes a bit of time. There we go. Okay. Turn the opacity down here and just let it go like that. You can see I'm really struggling to get it how I want it. You have to play with it, but I think I got it there, and then I can turn the opacity down here too. So I did turn my opacity up here down so it wasn't so heavy. And if I want to, I could create a clipping mask right here and give it a little bit. If I come to my hard round pressure size here, I can pick this up and go a little bit lighter, and I'm going to just put in a tiny, tiny reflected highlight right there. I think I'm going to use a soft round pressure size here, just so it's not so harsh. And then I'm going to fade it, and my opacity is still down. So I'm going to turn my smoothing on for this. And just placing it at the very bottom there. And then I'm just going to turn it down a little. I want it really subtle. So I'm going to zoom in for you guys. And I'm going to take this brush and just put it along the bottom. And so there it goes. And then fade it in. Okay. So there's my shaded sphere. I could even like, you know, come in and draw a little bit of a highlight up in here even more. And then fade that if I need to, but I kind of like that, just little highlight works. Okay, so now on the table, I'm gonna make a new layer, create clipping mask again. I'm gonna pick up this dark green. I'm gonna come back to my elliptical. It's not a dark green, it's a light green. And I'm gonna make this going in the direction of my shading. And I'm gonna pick a darker version of this green. And I'm going to come back here, so there it is. I'm just going to, and I'm going to let it fade, and then I'm going to go a little bit darker right here at the very edge of the ball. And then I'm going to go to select, deselect, and I'm going to have that shadow. Now, one thing I could do, I'm going to turn this off for a second. I'm going to do it again. And when you go to select, I can feather this right here, and I'm going to just put 3, and it's just going to soften my edges so that my shadow isn't so harsh. So I'm going to redraw this here, and I've got my feather at 3. We'll see if that's enough. And again, I'm just going to let it be darker on the edge here and kind of fade, and then select, deselect. And you can see it just kind of softens that edge. And you can decide which one do you like more, the harder edge or the softer edge. This feels a little more realistic. I can also here, if the light's coming from here, I can take my gradient tool and bring some of that shading in, so we can add some shading right onto that table. Okay, and it kind of creates more of that atmosphere, more of that mood. You can see I do need to crop my piece just a little bit. I'll do that at the end, but here's now the shading of the table. I'm just going to neaten this up a little. So I'm going to pull this up and pull that up and hit enter. Okay, and then very simply, I just need to do the same to the background. So I'm going to create my clipping mask. I'm going to pick up my color, go darker. I'm still using the same settings on my gradient. And maybe I want it a little darker behind the table. And you can always do edit, fade right there. That last one was too much, so I just steps back that. And that looks pretty good. So now I have got my gradient sphere. I'm going to go to File, Save As. I'm going to save on my computer. And I'm going to name it Gradient Sphere. Save. And then, of course, I'm going to File, save a copy, save on my computer, and I'm going to change that to JPEG to turn in. Okay, and you are done.